Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the transportation sector, the sea, the marine, the land and air transportation that is taking place, the development that is taking place here in Egypt. We're going to be focusing on the development regarding the ports and the logistics areas and the services associated to the transportation sector. And joining us here tonight in the studio to shed more light on this, we're joined by Engineer Sherin Naggar, the International Transportation Consultant. Engineer Naggar, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start off our discussion with Engineer Naggar, let's check out the main story making the news today, where President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has witnessed the admission tests for the would-be holders of the Ministry of the Education's post. The tests are undergoing in collaboration with the Egyptian Military Academy. Well, Egypt is about to establish 15 logistic zones, really the dry ports, to increase the trade volume and obviously the imports and exports activity. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back. The Ministry of Transportation implements a number of logistical zones and links them with the Egyptian ports, land, sea and dry, in order to serve and enhance the trade movement. A network of dry ports and logistic zones are being established, amounting to 15 dry ports and a logistic zone linked to the sea ports, besides multiple means of transport to increase circulation in the ports and increase the volume commerce. The plan includes the establishment of dry ports and logistic areas, including in the 6th of October, the 10th of Ramadan, Sadat, New Burg Al Arab, New Damietta, New Fayoum, Beni Suef, Koma Boradi, New Suhag, Qastal, Arkin, At-Tur and Saloum. It accommodates 6 million equivalent containers annually, and the 6th of October dry port was completed and operated. The 10th of Ramadan dry port and its awarding plan were launched in April 2023. The remaining 12 dry ports and logistics areas are being offered, and a memorandum of understanding was signed to establish, manage and operate the integrated logistics area in Saloum on an area of 700 acres to serve the trade movement with neighboring countries. The Ministry of Transport completed the implementation of the tri-port construction project on the 6th of October on an area of 100 acres at a cost of £172 million in partnership with the private sector. This comes within the framework of implementing Egypt's plans to expand the establishment of dry ports and logistical areas to maximize Egyptian trade movement, increase exports, maximize the performance of Egyptian ports, and improve the efficiency of the country's logistics system. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion with Engineer Naggar. Sir, now, the government has realized the importance of the transportation sector and obviously the maritime transport in specific. And really, there have been a lot of efforts concerning the Egyptian ports, be it on the Mediterranean or the Red Sea. Now, before we start talking about the specifics of it, how important is it, the working on the development and the upgrading of the facilities and the infrastructure of these ports, especially that Egypt depends mainly over 90% of its trade exchange really takes place through the maritime transport?
Well, development of any section in the maritime industry, any means of transport, even by buying a new truck, is an addition and is always a plus sign. Of course, the development of ports in Egypt is extremely important because on many conferences and on many occasions there has been discussion about why Egypt is lagging behind on the maritime transport sector, although Egypt qualifies to become one of the largest maritime hubs in the world, if not the largest maritime hub in the world, considering that going through the Egyptian territory is the Suez Canal. And today we have something in the vicinity of 23,000 ships going up and down the canal, and that figure is also groomed to increase. So it is extremely important to have the ports and the land infrastructure to support this massive transit channel in one side, and also to support transit and local industry and create an industrial and maritime hub through Egyptian ports of various types. First of all, you have the new Suez Canal Economic Zone. That is something which has already been up and is starting to run. It is starting to show some positive signs. The Russians are going there and investing very heavily. On the Suez end of the zone, you have the Chinese free zone, industrial free zone called TIDA, which is controlling, or actually containing a lot of small factories, and a lot of Chinese product will soon be manufactured in Egypt, if not already in line and being sold out to Europe. Now that brings the Far Eastern market, Far Eastern producers, more closer to the proximity of the consumer markets. And the consumer market here primarily not being Europe, not anymore, but it is more likely Africa. And Africa is a huge market, it's a very rich market, and it's a very, sadly, it's also very underdeveloped, and a lot of development is required to bring Africa into an average or a good standard of living overall on its population. That means that there's a lot of investment is going to move. Investment means equipment, means raw materials, means all types of things, and these move by sea and through ports.
Yes.
So that is the most important thing to start with. Yes, Egypt definitely is going on the right track, and definitely we are moving towards becoming a hub. I do not say a major hub, although we qualify, and all the studies that I have read over Egypt in various countries in the world say that Egypt can be one of the largest maritime hubs in the world, if not by far the largest.
Yes. Well, talking about the development of it, like we are launching and establishing 15 new logistic zones, and part of the logistical development for the port is actually adding 5 new tankers to the fleet, fuel supply tankers. Should that really work on developing the maritime logistics and services that would be provided to cargo ships going back and forth, be it on the Mediterranean or in the Red Sea for the Suez Canal?
Well, supplies is something very important. A country like Singapore, for example, is making a lot of money on supplies because you are passing by Singapore, you pick up your spare parts, you pick up your provisions, you pick up your bunkers, and off you go. Or you dump your waste, your sludge, whatever needs to be removed off the ship safely and environmentally friendly. It goes off in Singapore. Now, Egypt is not any smaller than Singapore. In fact, Egypt is multiples of Singapore. I mean, if you look at El Alamein city, the El Alamein city alone is as big as Singapore, the whole country.
Yes.
So you can imagine the magnitude of services we are qualified to offer compared to other hubs. And Singapore is a main hub, is a main world hub. Now, this being said, yes, supplies, of course, are very important, and to supply fuel and fuel tankers to ships, yes, this is very important, especially considering the fact that Egypt is becoming a major energy hub. Energy hub, meaning that they will be storing a lot of crude oil coming from Iraq, coming from various destinations in the Gulf, storing for their account. You have the Summit pipeline connecting the Mediterranean with the Red Sea that is actually being expanded at the moment. You have the Petro hub in the Red Sea by Summit, which is a very big hub that's going to be storing gas, storing fuel, production of all types of refineries. You have in Mars Al Hamra, there is a big storage facility which is being massively enhanced. You have in Ras Shokir they are building, in Ras Gharib they are building. All these are, when it comes to bulk, liquid bulk fuels, yes, and this is what qualifies Egypt to become a world energy hub. I'm not talking just about energy being crude oil, because crude oil is becoming out of fashion. It's becoming a pollutant these days more than it is a fuel. But okay, could talk about gas. You have how many gas finds recently? You have Zohr, and then you have the new gas, which is multiple size of Zohr, called Noor. You have Nargis, you have Noras, you have Borollos. You have the count doesn't stop. And okay, fine. We cannot see the credit of all these now because these are still under development, and it takes some years before, or some time before you can build up a production line that can actually reflect and show you gas going out and money coming back in. So yes, it is very important. However, we need to still enhance on our petroleum services and petroleum facilities. It is very unfortunate that most of the petroleum service ports in Egypt are built initially for shallow water exploration, which is near shore exploration. It is not built for deep sea exploration. Deep sea exploration means that you have big ships, big supply boats that are long and that they are deep, and they cannot be accommodated in the current ports. So we need also to develop the petroleum service ports like Ras Shokir, Ras Gharib, Etko, Ma'adiyya. All these places, they are built for short sea or shallow water exploration units rather than deep sea exploration units. And there's a huge difference between the two.
Engineer Naggar, now we will be talking about the Red Sea and the Suez Canal with the expansion of it, but I want to focus first on the Mediterranean now. The Alexandria Port is one of the biggest and the main ports here in Egypt, and the Grand Alexandria Port project is a project that works on developing the Alexandria Port, also the Khela Port and El Max Port. It's really working on, connecting Africa or North Africa to the European continent. What sort of logistics services and development need to be undertaken for the development of the Alexandria Port to, as you've mentioned, to make it not just theoretically qualify as a transportation hub, but practically being, the measures need to be implemented to turn it into a practically the biggest maritime transportation hub in the world?
A very costly exercise, I must say, because if you look at the map of Alexandria Harbor and the map of what we call French Harbor, which is the area between Alexandria and the Khela, which what you call Mex.
Yes.
Mex Harbor, as you call it. We call it French Harbor. It's not common as French Harbor. The pedestrians, the buildings, there is a lot of haphazard buildings, and it is very close. In fact, some of those buildings are actually touching the fence of the port. So any port in the world must be supported by a good land facility, a good backup land. So when you land your cargo, you have a place to store it, and then you must have outside the port limit, you must have an annex that you can use in case of, to avoid congestion. Because ultimately, it is like a chain. If you do not have sufficient space to store the cargo that's being discharged from the ship, you will be causing congestion on the berth, and ultimately congestion on the ship, and ultimately congestion outside for other ships waiting to get their turn, because that ship is being delayed because she cannot discharge her cargo because there's no place to keep the cargo. That is the sequence of delay. Now, in this particular case, there is a lot of buildings, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say slums in that area. To remove that is going to be a very costly exercise. Alternatively, if you want to build into the sea, you're talking here about depths that can be as high as 14, 15 meters. Now, if you're talking about this kind of depth, can you imagine how much earth you need to do to pile in this area? Besides, you don't pile in the sea without having a lot more than earth than you would pile in on dry land, because you got a lot of water, you got currents, you got erosion, you got all sorts of challenging parameters, natural challenging parameters that will hinder your building all the time. So either way, this is going to become a very costly exercise. How long that is going to take to pay back, of course, that is for the feasibility studies to say, but from my practical point of view, I'm not an economist myself, but as an engineer, I would say no, this is going to be a very costly exercise, either to strip all the land behind the shore, behind the fence, and expand the landscape, the land area, or pile in order to create a new port with a lot of backup areas in order to cater for the cargo coming in on the berths.
Well, there should be a road, I mean, to try and move around such a problem. The government has worked on establishing a road connecting the Ghela port and the International Coastal Highway, and trying to connect the trucks between the outskirts of the Alexandria and the Ghela port, navigating away from the city traffic, and establishing a railway station on an area of 15,000 square meters, having a garage that would actually accommodate 4,000 cars. Would establishing such a road and such a railway station and such a building, a garage that would accommodate 4,000 cars, would that work on avoiding this sort of congestion and avoiding going 15 meters into the waters?
The road does exist, and in fact it was inaugurated not very long ago. It is called the axis of, it's named after the late Marshal Zikri, who was the commander-in-chief of the Egyptian Navy during 1973 war. That road does exist, and it is big enough and it is capable of handling a lot of traffic. There is rail linking between, already there's a rail link between Alexandria and the Ghela. There is no problem. There's a lot of rail links over there, poor as they may be because they are very old. They have not been developed as yet. But eventually, if they become developed and you create a rail hub that will link Burj Al Arab with the Ghela and Alexandria, that would be fine. But talking about moving into the sea or stripping the land from the actual builders at the moment, or from actual inhabitants at the moment, that's a different story altogether. Because then you will need space, you need a logistics hub. And the only way to create a logistics hub under the present circumstances is to create a big hub in Burj Al Arab, which is in the close proximity and is connectable to both the Ghela and Alexandria, and use the two ports as major gateway ports. So all the cargo coming in is railed immediately into that big dry port, and then you can go and take your cargo from there. By doing this, you don't need to expose yourself to building billions of dollars into the sea at one time. And at the same time, you also are creating a new community of customs, of clearance agencies, of trucking companies and all that. Everybody will be moving outside the density of traffic in Alexandria, which is becoming actually prohibitive. And when you do that, you are diffusing this massive congestion from the Ghela and Alexandria, Mex, Abari, Mafruza, all these areas. You're going to be diffusing all that outside by creating these bridges. And there's already one bridge called Bridge 27, which is named after Gate 27 in the Port of Alexandria, and that goes straight from the harbor outside directly to the ring road and to the the coastal highway, the Marshal Zikri's highway, which has already been inaugurated. That actually exists and it's functional.
Well, working on trying to reduce the congestion and the sort of pressure and the load being applied on the Alexandria port and the Ghela port, obviously. Now, you've mentioned the Burj Al Arab port, and there's also the New Alamein port, and there's which is on the Mediterranean, obviously, and there's been an electric railway that will be linking, for instance, the new Alamein port to El Ain al-Sukhna port. Do you feel that these new ports or these existing ports will actually work on taking a lot of pressure off of the Alexandria port and Alexandria city as a whole? And what does the electric railway linking El Alamein port to Ain al-Sukhna, how does that help the navigation and the transportation activities?
Well, the port will be linking Borg Al Arab logistics center, which I'm hoping it will be the support to the Alexandria and the Khaila to Sukhna. And the idea there is sound to a large extent, because you're basically linking the Mediterranean with the Red Sea. You are creating a small Suez Canal on rails. So you have two Suez Canals. Now that can never compete with the Suez Canal because of the economy of scale. And how much is a train is capable of carrying? 100, 200, 500, 600, 1,000 containers? Well, the ships in the Suez Canal are 24,000 containers moving. How can you compete? Scale does not fit. Okay, this could be directed to handle special cargoes, like time-sensitive cargoes, like expensive cargoes that can actually tolerate in their price, they can tolerate a high expenditure in transport, moving them from A to B. That is what you cater for. That is one thing. Now, if you're talking about this can be the nucleus of the new project, which I am very proud to say should shortly be launching in Egypt by private sector, and that project is the Golden Bridge between three continents, Egypt being the Golden Bridge between three continents. And it is basically creating a pivot out of Egypt to link Europe with Africa, Africa with Asia, and Asia with India, Pakistan, through the One Belt, One Road initiative or the Silk Route. But of course, it was preferred not to call it the Silk Route because of political issues between the Chinese and the Europeans. And the minute you say silk, it's China, and China has got its own competitors, its own rivals, and then suddenly you are caught out in the middle. We are people who run business and economics and ships. We are not interested in politics, we're not interested in rivalry between countries. We're interested in connecting countries commercially. And that is why this whole project has been building since 2014, so it's been nearly 10 years in the making. And it is a complete ripened project. A project like this will definitely, combined with the various development projects around the coast of Egypt, be it in Red Sea or on the Mediterranean, it will definitely bring Egypt on top of the world as the biggest maritime hub.
Engineer Naggar, now, what about the Ain al-Sukhna port? Because it seems that a lot of experts, analysts, really rate it very highly, and it seems to have some sort of an edge over the Mediterranean ports and the rest of the Suez Canal ports on the Red Sea. What sort of advantage or what sort of edge does the Ain al-Sukhna port hold, and how can we actually work on developing it?
Well, first of all, Ain al-Sukhna is not the port that many people are making it out to be. Why? Because Ain al-Sukhna port is competing directly with two major rivals, King Abdullah Port and Jeddah Port. Now, those two ports are very big when it comes to local cargo. So if you want to create a hub, you always look for the place to use a hub for container transshipment where you have a base cargo. You're going there anyway, so I might as well do some transshipment while I'm there. So transshipment piggybacks on the local cargo rather than the other way around. In our case, no, we are reversed. We are using the transshipment hubs like, for example, Damietta or Port Said, and the local cargo is piggybacking on transshipment. But that is to the Mediterranean. But with the Red, because we have some competition, of course, in the Mediterranean, but it is not as fierce as the competition we would get from places like King Abdullah Port or Jeddah or even Jebel Ali. Okay, we used to have also a very big transshipment rival in Yemen, in Aden, which was a very big hub, which unfortunately with the mess that they have in Yemen at the moment, the whole thing has come to a complete stop. But what I'm saying is that, no, Sokhna can be developed very nicely, but it will never reach the magnitude that is being imagined. The other thing, you're talking about Mediterranean ports and dry ports and logistics port and so on. I very much regret having to say that we lack seriously a master plan. A master plan means that we should have a plan that will tell us, okay, fine, I'm going to build a port in Sokhna. What do I need that port to do? Is the port going to manage phosphate exports? Is it going to manage bauxite imports? Is it going to manage grain imports? How much? What kind of volume? What is the port going to serve? Which area is the port going to serve? I mean, there's no point in saying, okay, I'm creating a port in Sokhna in order to serve Al Alamein. Why? Because I have Mars Al Hamra next door. Okay, Mars Al Hamra is an oil port. Maybe that's a bad example. But I have the Khayla. I have on the other side, I have Gargoub on the western, on the extreme west of Egypt, that can also be used as a hub. But we have to have a master plan. That master plan should define clearly which port should do what and how specialized each port should be in order to cater best for, first of all, you should reduce your transport burden on roads. You're building roads by billions and trillions of dollars. Now, you cannot use these roads to use for trucks to move from A to B for long distances, because then you wreck those roads much quicker than their actual lifespan. So you'll have to rebuild them once again. Who's going to pay for all that cost? We still need to stand on our feet. So that's one we need to develop. So you need to always, when you are serving with a port, you need to have the shortest distance between the port and the industrial or the logistics center that serves it. And there is no such a thing as a logistics hub. A logistics hub, logistics is a service industry. It is something that serves an industry. What's the point in having a brilliant logistics hub and you have no factories for it to serve? What's the logic behind it? There's no logic. Logistics is logic. You see, so it is important that it is very well defined that if there is a port and there's an annex, or we may call it a dry port, inland port, this annex is serving this particular port, and both are serving an area which has industry, which has trade, which has manufacturing, which even has transshipment, like drawback systems where you bring in raw materials, you manufacture them and send them out for fully finished products. All this kind of thing should be confined into one area. And that area should be in close proximity so that you do not exhaust the road network or the rail network that you have.
Yes, and really that really makes sense regarding having industrial zones and industrial zones within the Suez Canal and in very close proximity to the ports. Now, Egypt has been working on developing the seaports to encourage the international trade. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back. Egypt has been implementing a comprehensive plan to upgrade its ports at the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, with the goal of becoming a logistical center in the Middle East and Africa and promoting its presence on the international trade map. The plan aims to boost the competitiveness of Egypt's ports, create added value, lure investments and activate the flow of importation and exportation. Egypt has many important ports at the Mediterranean Sea, including Alexandria, Dahlia, Damietta, El Arish, Bursaid and East Bursaid. The port of Jarjoub is also of special importance. The new plan, expected to be completed in 2024, covers 58 projects for upgrading the Egyptian ports, with costs estimated at 63 billion Egyptian pounds. The development work includes building berths, trading yards, new wharves, commercial and logistical areas, dredging shipping lanes and port docks, and linking them to the railways and electrical train network, as well as providing all ship services. Egypt has started to develop Ain al-Sukhna, one of the targeted ports at the Red Sea, with an investment of $1.27 billion to shift it into a central port at the Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea. Egypt is working on digital transformation of the operation of ports, linking seaports, dry and internal ports, consumption centers and manufacturing areas through road and rail networks, which would facilitate the movement of transport and distribution of exports and imports. Egypt plans to link the ports and industrial areas in the Sinai Peninsula with the northwestern Gulf of Suez and provide logistic services for ships inside the ports such as Ain al-Sukhna and East Bursaid, with an aim to create added value. The development of those ports would attract more investments to Egypt and transform the country into a logistical and commercial center in the Middle East and Africa. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Engineer Naggar. Now, sir, you've mentioned the importance of having not just the logistics of it or developing the services, but also to encourage the development of such maritime ports, be it on the Mediterranean or the Red Sea. It's really working on establishing some sense of sort of communities or societies, people who would actually go and move there and live there, who would work on providing and working all these services within the ports and the docks. Now, how far are we, or how easy is it or hard is it to actually establish these communities? How can we encourage people to move around, to start moving their families and livelihoods to these areas, to work on developing these industrial zones, these ports, these docks?
Well, as long as you have a social community attached to any logistics center or port, then you don't need to work hard on anything, because people will move there. If I have a few children, a couple of children that need to go to school, and there's no school in where I'm working, then I'll keep them there and commute. But if there is already a school, well, I'll save myself the hassle of having to go back and forth to meet my family every week or every month or whatever, and work like as an expatriate in my own country. No. This is being done. The government is actually creating the communities already, offering medical services, offering education, offering proper housing, or I would call decent housing for people to live in. That is most important for anybody to move out there. Once people see that this is available, and this is available at a reasonable cost that I can afford, and maybe by moving out of the congested and the choked areas where I'm working at the moment, I'm going to go into a better place, smell fresh air, work better, my children get better education, I will live in a better standard, then people will start moving. You're talking about places like, for example, 2 new ports that have been created over the past couple of years. The Port of Gargoub. Port of Gargoub is a big port, and it is qualifying very much to service the export industry of the salts and minerals from places deep in the Western Sahara, like places in Siwa, Abu Tartur. These places can be served very well to export raw materials, because in that area there's no industry, so you cannot develop any semi-finished products or finished products there. So it'll have to be raw materials. That is one. And then on the other side you have the Port of Bernice, which is on the Red Sea, and it's 6 hours steaming from the Port of King Abdullah. Now, if you link those 2 ports together by a decent railway and a fast enough railway, then you have linked already the whole chain between Europe and China on the southern route. That is your Golden Bridge. That is one scenario for the Golden Bridge, because there you'll be linking Africa to Asia, Europe to China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or to India, and you can actually survive on both. You will have a big opportunity to move cargoes by rail, you have to move cargoes by ships, there is a lot of potential. And I dare say the cost is not going to be horrendous, it's going to be astronomical. Why? Because most of the facilities and the infrastructure already exists. So you're just going to make good use of it and deal with it and exploit it properly. And this is where the master plan, again I refer to, comes to, because then I know, all right, fine, if I'm coming from Gargoub over to Bernice, how many spots can I visit en route to develop, to exchange cargo? Do I go to Fayoum, or do I go to Burj Al Arab, or do I go to 10th of Ramadan, or do I go to 6th of October? Then you have the scenarios different. Then you can be serving not just the general cargo or not just the bulk cargoes on the export side, no, but you'll also be able to serve, connect all these inland hubs, even as intermediate cargoes. So if I'm connecting Fayoum with Burj Al Arab, for example, that is not very costly because I'm going by rail anyway, and the wagons are going empty. So if I put a few cargoes on board and take it from A to B, it's only going to cost me what? The handling of this cargo? So what? It's not much. But you, as a client, you have managed to move your cargo from A to B at a reasonable cost. So when you start selling that product, it has not cost you as much as it should have cost you. Then you are making a profit. And then, of course, the government is taxing you.
Yes.
So everybody's making a profit.
Engineer Naggar, I mean, you're well seasoned and experienced in terms of dealing with the maritime transports and dealing with a lot of clients now, dealing with the whole economic crisis globally as a result, for instance, of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Does that really hold back a lot of the investors, a lot of the clients of actually investing and working on the financing of developing such ports, creating these golden bridges, really financing the development and the strengthening of such ports here in Egypt and the industrial zones and everything related to it, because it will, in the end, benefit these investors? Do you feel that the economic crisis is holding them back?
Well, let me tell you a say. In the maritime industry, we say that if the world economy coughs, shipping gets pneumonia. It is that bad. The barometer and the thermometer of international trade is shipping, especially crude oil and energy ships, naturally. Now, and of course, bulk ships. Funnily enough, the COVID-19 crisis caused disastrous effects on all sectors of the shipping market. No energy, hardly anything moving, a lot of sanctions, people are curfews in some countries, people cannot move and so on. Well, I mean, I don't need to tell you, it was all over the papers.
Yes.
But then, when you talk about Egypt, talking about the world economy, once this Ukraine war started, container carriers, for example, have made phenomenal figures. You're talking about some carriers have earned up to $37 billion in 1 year. I mean, I don't think even the smallest container operator has made anything below $2.5 to $3 billion. I mean, they would be very happy post-COVID. They'd be, I mean, they would, oh, thanks the stars that they have made $500-600 million with a huge fleet. Post-COVID and during the Ukraine war, they have made billions and billions and billions. Now, that, of course, has reflected negatively on another sector. All the smaller industrialists, all the smaller traders having to pay for their containers figures that cannot possibly be accounted for in their economics, so they went bankrupt. That is why you get an inflation, world inflation. There is so many parameters. Fuel, for example, fuel oil has risen. Bunkers have risen to astronomical prices. So, and then suddenly you see China saying, "Okay, no, we are not going to produce any much more steel this year," and then all of a sudden, big ships that are carrying ore for massive volumes of ore, like the Cape size, 200,000 tons, 150,000 tons, suddenly they fall, they collapse, the freight levels collapse by to 10%, 15, 20%, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
Alternatively, when you start having China saying, okay, fine, I'm going to import more crude oil, I'm going to import more gas, and then suddenly the crude oil carriers and the gas carriers, their prices, the daily running price or daily charter price will shoot sky high.
Yes.
So it is, we are living in a very unpredictable and a very volatile market at the moment on all sectors of transport.
Yes.
I mean maritime transport.
So, because we're running out of time, but I need to ask you, I mean, we understand that a lot of our ports are using third-generation technology. A lot of other countries are using fifth-generation technologies, and we've signed agreements to try and apply and implement the fifth-generation technologies. Also, the ports on the Red Sea have been using the vessel traffic management system to help facilitate and speed up and make it easier for cargo ships to move back and forth through the canal. Do you feel such efforts will improve the efficiency of our maritime transportation, the good reputation of the Suez Canal can be further enhanced?
Well, the vessel management, the traffic management systems has been implemented by the Suez Canal Authority for years now, and is being extended to ports as they go along. But you see, again, this is what I'm saying, master planning is very important because they do not go in tandem. The Suez Canal Authority does its own thing, and the maritime transport sector does its own thing. The maritime transport sector in itself is divided into various sectors. I mean, you get ports like Gargoub, like Bernice, like West Alexandria are owned by the Navy, and Abu Qir. They are run in a different style. You have Alexandria, Dekheila, Damietta are maritime transport ministry. And then you have Portside East, Portside West, Sokhna are being run by the Suez Canal Economic Zone. You cannot have this division.
Yes.
You must come to the world. I want to become a hub. Okay, fine. I'm a hub because every port is under one management. It's got one policy. It's got one tariff. Everything is the same. So when I come into Egypt, I know if I'm coming to Egypt, be it Alexandria, Damietta, whatever, I'm coming to say, it's going to cost me $10 here, and $5 there, $2 there. End of story. I don't have to negotiate every time I come. I don't have any uncertainties.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Engineer Naggar has mentioned, well, there are a lot of efforts being exerted, but still a lot more needs to be done to really turn Egypt into a maritime transportation hub, live up to the reputation and standard that is would be justly deserved by Egypt. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Engineer Sherin Naggar, the International Transportation Consultant. Engineer Naggar, always a pleasure having you with us on the show.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Night International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.